I've become convinced that near-death experiences establishes the reality of life after death based on my own personal research and the research of many others. What's important is what led to me believing that near-death experiences prove life after death. And the answer is there's 9 lines of evidence that I've derived in my research. And I find those 9 lines of evidence, any one of them, to be very strong evidence that there's an existence of life after death. But if you put all 9 together, I think the combination of all 9 lines of evidence becomes, in my opinion, compelling.
When people have a mystical experience, what usually happens, how they describe it, is that they begin to lose the usual sense of material reality around them. Because those experiences have been described in extremely real terms, meaning that when people have that experience, they perceive it to represent a more fundamental level of reality than our everyday material reality that we normally live in.
The people tell me that this was more real than ever, what they experienced during their life.
So during a period of so-called unconsciousness, what they experienced was more real?
More real than ever. And
that must have been shocking to you when you first heard that.
It was shocking for the patients who experienced it.
What my research found was that 76% of the near-death experiencers surveyed indicated that their level of consciousness and alertness was actually greater than their level of consciousness and alertness during their everyday life. And that is medically inexplicable.
About everything I believed, about all the metaphysical beliefs I had at that time, and everything the culture had taught me, what I learned at school and what I learned in my family, and I just threw it all out, because the touchstone for me has always been what happened in the NDE. It was more real than my sitting here 39 years later and telling the story. That really happened. This is like a dream, but that was real.
Was the reality any more intense than reality you perceive normally, or was it less so?
It was real. I mean,
it was just real.
I would say it was just real. I mean, this is real, I suppose, but that was just very real. It certainly left a very strong imprint on my mind. I mean, I've never forgotten it, and that's over 17 years ago now.
So I drifted way, 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 way up into this beautiful golden light. And as soon as I got there, I just knew that this is the real world. This has everything that I could ever need. This is truth, it's reality, it's absolute love. And everything down there that I'd left behind was completely unreal, illusion, and empty.
Metaphorically, I turned around and looked at this world again. I saw the world that I had momentarily left, and it looked like so much paper mache. It looked like two-dimensional fluff, that this was the illusion, and it was all contained within this infinite presence.
If your heart has stopped and your brain is not functioning and can't produce consciousness, but yet the person can leave their body and look down from the ceiling at their body and then go down through the tunnel and so on, this suggests that consciousness and mind are different from just brain function.
And he talked about the bright light at the end of the tunnel, as I recall, and so on. But the thing that astounded me was that he described that operating room floating around and saying, "I saw you and Dr. Cattaneo standing in the doorway with your arms folded talking."
Nearly half of people who have a near-death experience will have an out-of-body state. We'll call it an OBE. During that time, their consciousness rises up, and usually from an area above their body, they can observe both their own body, often frantic resuscitation efforts, and other earthly ongoing events going on, again at a time that they're often clinically dead.
And I saw all of these post-its sitting on this TV screen. And what those were any call I got, the nurse would write down who called and the phone number and stick it on the monitor, and then the next post-it would stick to that post-it, and then I'd have a string of post-its of phone calls I had to make. He described that. I mean, there's no way he could have described that before the operation because they didn't have any calls.
Part of my study was to look at 617 near-death experiences. We found 287 of those near-death experiences involved observations of earthly, everyday events at this time when they were unconscious or dead. And to my considerable surprise, we found that an unbelievable 97.6% of the time, every observation that they were making, everything that they shared in our survey in their narrative form was realistic. In other words, there was nothing that seemed unrealistic about their observations of earthly events to either the near-death experiencer or to myself personally looking over their narrative.
He was up there.
Yeah.
He described the scene, things that there is no way he knew. I mean, he didn't wake up in the operating room and see all this stuff. I mean, he was out.
Right.
And was out for, I don't know, even a day or two.
Right.
While we recovered him in the intensive care unit.
I get to work, and this funny thing starts happening to me. And my knees give way, and I just went down on my knees, and then fell forward. Like that. But I didn't hit the floor. I saw myself there.
I was standing in the hallway and I saw, yellow caution tape right in the kitchen. So I look and I'm like, what is going on? Why is there yellow caution tape? So I walk down the hall into the kitchen and I see like this big group of people standing there, and then they're all in a circle. I'm like, what are they looking at? Like, what's going on? So I look down into the circle, and I'm at a party. I'm supposed to be, having a good time, but like there's now caution tape, and I'm like, what is going on? I look down into the circle, and I'm in the middle of the circle, and everybody's staring at me.
At the time, I felt a release from my own body, like spirit was leaving the body, and I ventured up towards the ceiling in that particular ward, whereas I was able to look down on the people that were trying to bring me back to life.
They were dragging me out.
But you saw them dragging you out, did you?
Yeah.
You saw them from above? I saw them,
and I was thinking at the time, don't bother, boys. Don't leave me. I'm okay. And I had this feeling, sensation of turning just above my body. I'm moving upwards. Lovely. It was the most loveliest feeling. It's like summer flowers in winter. It was beautiful. And I thought, oh, this is good.
ผมก็มองเห็นตัวผมเนี่ยมองเห็นตัวผมเขายืนเป็นกลุ่มกันล้อมรอบหน้าบ้านผมแล้วผมนี่คือว่าอุจจาระยังไม่นั่นเขาเรียกธาตุอะไรเนี่ยไปหมดแล้วแต่ว่าฉี่เนี่ยแตกแล้วถ้าเกิดว่าอุจจาระแตกกับฉี่แตกเนี่ยคือว่าไปแล้วทีนี้ตัวเตอผมเขียวหมดแล้วผมเห็นเขายืนหมดแล้วพี่สาวแฟนแฟนร้องจนจะเป็นบ้าแฟนร้อง
All my faculties were still there.
And then I became aware that I wasn't looking at the surgeon from the operating table, but I was way above looking down, and he was chatting, and they were closing the place up and putting lights out and all that sort of thing. And I had this incredible experience of moving up into a misty sort of area and then becoming aware that I was in a tunnel.
ปั๊มหน้าอกด้วยว่าให้ผมอะแบบหายใจขึ้นมาปั๊มเพื่อให้ผมรอดไงให้ผมลืมตาอะไรทำนองนี้ทั้งตบหน้าทั้งอะไรทุกอย่าง
อันนี้ยังอยู่ที่บ้านเนาะ
ได้ยินด้วยว่าพี่สาวบอกว่าเขาจับแฟนผมขึ้นมาปิ๋วตีมันไปสบายแล้วผมได้ยินอย่างนั้นเลยได้ยินทุกอย่างเพราะผมพยายามสะกิดไหล่แฟนผมนะทุกอย่างนะว่าผมยังไม่ตายแต่คือเขาไม่สามารถรับรู้แล้วก็เหมือนในหนังอะคือเราไม่มีร่างไงแต่คือเราสะกิดแต่ละ
I lost consciousness. The whole thing was just so frightening. And the next thing I knew, I woke up out in the hallway, and I looked up and down the hall, and I thought, if they catch me out here, I'm going to get into trouble. I'm supposed to be suspended in that bed. So I turned around and came back into the room and looked down into the circle bed and saw my body. And that didn't bother me at all. I felt totally peaceful. It didn't bother me at all until I started drifting away from my body and moving through something that later, as a researcher, I could call a tunnel. At the time, I had no explanation for any of this because I was an atheist.
My body was in the bed. I was up there. I could see the doctors and nurses working on me. I was nice and warm and comfortable and not distressed or anything like that.
I was watching them moving back and forth and around this person who was to my left, and I heard one of them speaking to the patient and saying their name, and I realized they were talking about me. And I thought, well, this is so strange. How can this possibly be them talking about me when I'm right here, you know? And so now I'm really kind of curious, and I'm saying to who's ever standing closest to me, excuse me, I heard my name, but I'm right here, and I'm fine. I don't understand.
I remember as I'm leaving my physical body, floating up to the ceiling and glancing down one more time at the paramedics that were coming to help me, and knowing that that was me, and yet I was up above at the same time with the real me, the spiritual soul, watching all of these events unfold, and I let go.
And the next thing I realized is that I have moved now to the foot of this person's bed, and I'm looking dead on at them while everybody's sort of working on this patient. And I realize as I'm looking at this patient that it's me.
The light on the camera, on the television screen, never goes out. Different images appear, and before we drop the body, we have no idea what those images will be.
I was greeted by a group of the most joyous spirits. And these were spirits that I couldn't identify as, oh gee, there's my father or my babysitter. Because each of these spirits were more than just that one person.
I was upset because I didn't know what was happening. What God did is He used people or things that I liked to calm me down.
There was this angel on the ceiling, and I have to admit that I played hooky from Hebrew school, and I didn't know anything about my religion because I stopped reading from the Bible in 3rd grade, so I didn't know that there were Jewish traditions about angels, and I thought that angels were something on top of a Christmas tree. So when I saw the angel, I was surprised, and I was looking at him like, are you in the right place?
And the next thing I knew, my grandmother was there. Now, she had been dead for 14 years, and I had never once believed that anybody existed beyond their death. And my grandmother just put her arms around me like she did when I was a child and pulled me into her chest.
A figure came up, and he was Pop. He asked me, "Are you Todd's son?" I said yes. He said that he was his grandpa, so that's where I met him.
And there were beings, not that I could see, but that I was aware of. And they were completely compassionate, loving, incredibly caring beings.
They were so filled with love. And that's true of everything having to do with heaven, and every angel I talked to. There's this all-encompassing sense of love.
But the next thing I know, I'm sitting at a conference table, a long conference table, and my wrists were resting on the table, and I could sense that there were people touching my arms. I could see their hands, different genders, different ages, different nationalities, but they all seemed like people I knew.
Kwam uit dat hele mooie witte lichte wolkjes kwam mijn buurvrouw. En de armen uit elkaar van, goh, Ria, ben jij er ook? En ik wil naar haar toe gaan. We praten niet met woorden, maar met onze gedachten, telepathie. Ik weet niet wat het is, maar ik begreep wat ze zei. En ik wil naar haar toe. En meteen komt mijn broer van links en die ook uit een hele mooie witte licht hij had.
And he took my hand, such as it was, and I was at peace. It was like I knew him, or I didn't have any questions at that point. And we went flying out the window. And I was staying in Venice Beach, and flying out the window and going to the Pacific Ocean, which was one of my favorite things. And
off to my left, down the table, about halfway, was a man who was dressed like my childhood idea of God. He had white hair, a beard, a long white robe tied at the waist, sandals, the whole thing. And he sent me a message telepathically. Rather stern, I think, because I had a rather stern idea of God at the time. I was young. And he said, "What do you want?" The next...
That really is, I think, important about the near-death experience, and in regard to the life review phenomenon, is it isn't just a life review. It's a reliving of your life. And when people describe this, it's not always done in this way, but when people describe the full experience, it's every single act that you have done, every single thought that you have thought, every single word that you have spoken. Suddenly, all of this is back with you. You are running through it again, and as you say, you see and you experience the effects of these acts, these thoughts, and these words of other people.
And some people may then have a life review where the whole of their life flashes in front of them and they see exactly what they've done, but it's very moral and very ethical.
That their entire life sort of fast forward and they experience their entire life. Then it was like rewinding the tape and going through his life again a second time. And this second time, he experienced the pain that he had caused people throughout his life.
This is the sort of thing that many people report, and when they report these kinds of experiences, they realize that in our life, we are the very people that we hurt, we are the very people that we help to feel good, and we experience these actions as though done to ourselves in the life review, so that when people start talking about the golden rule in the context of the near-death experience, the golden rule is not just a precept for moral conduct, it's the way it works, and you experience this during the life review.
But it didn't end there. Rewind went through the whole life experience, but this time he heard a voice, as it were, not audibly, but it was as if someone was saying, yes, you did cause people that pain, but you're finite, nobody is perfect, and the person reporting said, I felt forgiveness.
In this life review, I was shown everything from things like losing a tooth, losing my first tooth, graduating from high school, any kind of awards that I had won in athletics or cheerleading, all of these things that were great accomplishments, and they were really happy times, but they were significant, things that man deems as significant, if you will, accomplishments.
I began to see my life played in a movie before me. And there was like nobody there judging me. What was being judged were my positive and negative actions. And I saw everything that I had done to harm people and to help people. And I remember one thing that I had said to a person when I was 21 years old, and I made them cry. And I remember, it was like, not only did I get to see positive and negative actions weighed, but I got to see the result of it. And I was so horrified that I caused this person to feel so terrible, like the action penetrated their heart. And I'm thinking, oh my God, look at that. With one harsh word, I could destroy somebody, and I didn't even mean to.
So this was my second life review, and this time I didn't see at all what I had seen the first time in the life review. This time I could see. And everything that I saw in this life review, starting with the day that I was born until that day that I had died, was not at all what I had seen before. This time these were things that were important to God, not important to man. And they were not at all those accomplishments that I talked about before. These were things like love and acts of kindness, things I couldn't even remember that I had done. Befriending someone that everybody was mean to, or a neglected an animal, and I helped an animal, or giving money to a homeless person when I didn't really have money to give. Helping someone, across the street, an elderly person. Every single action, word, thought, feeling was all about love.
Each bubble was another event from my life. So we had the experience together of bobbing through the bubbles, and at the same time there was a linear sequence of the 32 years I had been here in this lifetime, and I kept hearing myself say, no wonder, no wonder. And that meant, no wonder you are the way you are. Look at the abuse you had as a child. And when I would think that, this energy would hold me tighter. And looking at it now, it was such a powerful experience that if that energy wasn't holding me, I don't think I could have survived. I think I just would have exploded. And together, what we re-experienced too was that my mother, who was the one that was very crazy and tormenting me, abusing me, I could feel and see and hear somehow all the abuse that she had had as a child. So there was like instant forgiveness because there was instant understanding.
And the review for me were events in my life that really defined who Jim was, who I feel my sense of self is, my sense of self-esteem and identity. And most of them were around places I've struggled and been stuck with. And as I experienced an event, it seemed to resolve in my mind and would disappear, and another event would emerge. And with each disappearance, the light got brighter and brighter and brighter.
They actually gave me all the experiences of all my lifetimes to make the decision whether to come in. And I looked at these concepts, and frankly, I didn't understand them. I thought, I just don't know enough. And I said to these, not said, but communicated to these amazing beings, I think I ought to go back. And then I was aware for the first time of the huge humour that's in the universe, and there was a sort of chuckle of appreciation. And the voices in unison said, we think you should.
Then you meet this being of light. People really love that. It's intense love, intense compassion, and they want to stay with the being of light. Then some people will even put a name on it. Some people say it's Jesus. Some people feel that it's a very high spiritual being.
Saw this being of light that was sort of floating in midair, and she was amazingly beautiful and powerful.
How can you tell anybody what the presence of God is? No religion can do it. No holy book can do it.
But
no article can do it. No novel can do it. It's being there, consumed by that power that is so beyond power that it dissolves identity, it dissolves cells, it dissolves molecules, it dissolves even nakedness, it dissolves everything.
There is nothing that you can compare it to. There are no words really to explain what it felt like. This is a space where you do not want to leave, you want to stay there. This is what we all strive to get at.
Again, you know, how do you find words? It was so awesome. That would be the word I would use. It was so awesome that I just can't place it in anything else.
I was a sort of virtual baby in nappies, if you like. A symbol of total innocence, but completely without fear, and very curious about the light. And then this experience starts getting trite, because I didn't really have the language to describe it.
I felt like I was the small I in the void, and as I traveled toward the light, I reconnected with the greater I, the I'm sorry, I'm really stammering.
It's a kind of love that can't even be explained. It is so hard to explain what being unconditionally loved is, or what it feels like. But it feels like feels like the safest, most exalted feeling. Well, you see, it's ineffable. You run out of words when you try to explain it.
As I continued to marvel at this and wonder what was happening to me, I started drawing towards this light that had such presence and such love to it.
I was connecting from the small eye to the greater eye, and it, how do I say a feeling? Because it's, I'm really grappling with this one. I'm sorry.
I saw in front of me start to envelop this light that coalesced. Couldn't tell the distance to the light, but it coalesced as a ball. And I marveled at this ball because it was infinite. And it seemed to be the presence I was suspended in that actually took form in front of me. And I spent some time just gaping at this because there was nothing around this ball. This ball contained the universe. Somehow I knew that. And there was nothing, no dimensions, no time, no space, no thing. It was not something my mind could wrap itself around.
And it felt like it was reaching out. And I use the word envelop because it felt like it just surrounded me and pulled me in. You know, like it was reaching out and it just wrapped itself around me and pulled me into unity. And that's where and in that process is where I was connecting to all of my totality of who I really am.
And there before me was the living presence of the being of light. And this being was all-knowing. It knew everything that was going to happen and will happen, and the reasons behind them.
So it was just in this beautiful place of existence that it was the 0 point. It had nothing had any meaning.
And there was a perfect justice, and it also contained all things that ever were or will be. And it was loving me. It was just pouring out this unconditional love at me. And I thought, well, this isn't the guy on the top of the Sistine Chapel.
En zo kwam ik in het licht. En ik begreep dat ik dood was. Ik begreep dat ik in het licht was en dat er was een en al liefde. Zoals je nu de warmte om je heen voelt, zo had je de complete liefde om je heen. En dat licht was zo mooi.
As I got closer to the light, I had this very strong sense of at last I'm home. About that time, the light opened up into the shape of a person, and still radiant light, and I just dove right into it, into perfect love and peace and joy and bliss, an amazing feeling.
What I think happens when we die is that we enter into another state of existence or another state of consciousness that is so extraordinarily different from the spatial and temporal frame of reality in which we exist in the physical world, that the language we have is not yet adequate to describe this other state of existence or consciousness.
I wasn't going to get let off so easy, because it said, I remember the words, the first words was, breathing.
Breathe deep.
Oh gosh, I didn't want to listen, because I knew what that meant. Breathing. Oh, I could feel it retarding, you know, slowing down. I thought, oh, crikey.
And then something or somebody told me it wasn't my turn and I had to go back. And whatever state I was in when I was up there came back down, came back into my body, and I pulled through.
But I knew that where I was with him in the light was where I belonged, and this was home. And that if I went back down there, I was leaving home. So I said to him, how can I go back down there knowing that this is where I belong with you?
Well, the next thing I knew, this radiant being appeared at the end of the table. The table actually seemed to disappear into space at that point. And she was made of blue-green flames, and she spoke out loud. All you need to believe in is love. And it answered all questions. I felt very clear about everything. The next thing I know, I went on to say, then let that be my work. And then I found myself floating above my body where I had died. And I went crashing down into my body, and my heart started beating. And I started breathing, and I was back.
Now his heart was this blazing blue star. It was just brilliant, clear electric blue, blazing star. So he broke off a point of his star. And he said to me, he put it into my heart, and he said, now you will know that I am always with you. So I don't remember agreeing, but I must have done. Because the next minute I'm floating over this body that is lying in this hospital bed, knowing this is not me. This is the house that I am living in.
And there was this palpable sadness that came over everyone, and everyone who was inside this hall sort of turned to look at me, and then the spirits who had brought me on this journey told me I had to go back to Earth. They told me that my work wasn't done.
This expanded, free, limitless being that lives in love, this is me. If I get back into that, I will be taking on suffering and pain. If I stay up here, I will never suffer again. So I'm hovering over this body, not really wanting to get back into it. But my babies were 10 days old.
En toen op een gegeven moment, toen wenkte hij mij. En het gaf mij zo'n gevoel van blijdschap dat ik gewenkt werd. Dat ik verder mocht gaan. En ik wist het zeker, als ik verder zou gaan, dan zouden de deuren van de poort voor mij geopend worden. En dan zouden er grootse dingen aan mij geopenbaard worden. En ik voelde zo'n intense vreugde dat ik het waard was om verder te gaan. Dat ik gewenkt werd en dat ik het waard was om verder te gaan in de hemel. Want zo ervoer ik dat op dat moment. Dit was voor mij de hemel. Dus ik werd gewenkt en op dat moment wilde ik van mijn plaats om verder te gaan over het pad naar de poort.
I didn't want to come back. When the light said to me, Andy, you have to go back, I said, I don't think so. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back in that body. I don't want to go back to that earth. I don't want to go back to all that. I'm home and I want to stay here. And then the light said to me the second time, Andy, you're going back.
En ik stond dus vast. Ik kon op geen enkele manier van mijn plek komen. En ik heb uit alle macht geprobeerd om een stap te zetten, om verder te gaan. En het lukte me niet. Ik stond volledig vast. En op dat moment hoorde ik mijn naam roepen. Ik hoorde een stem en die riep Tetty, Tetty. En ik voelde dat die stem, die kwam niet uit het licht. Die stem kwam van de andere kant. En het voelde alsof die stem mij terug wilde trekken. Alsof die stem mij terug wilde halen. Maar dat wilde ik niet. Want ik wilde hier blijven en ik wilde verder.
And I was very angry at the light for a long time. Because here I was in the light. I was able to hold the universe in my hands. And now, for reasons I did not understand, I'm stuffed back into the crappy old body that I had before. And I got to go through all this stuff being back on earth again. That didn't make sense to me. I wanted to be back in the light.
And I just felt this sense of connection to him when he spoke to me. A sense of love I had never experienced in my life. A sense of coming home to the very depths of myself. A sense of I am cherished to the very core of my being. I had never felt that kind of love ever. And as he's speaking to me, he says to me, you can't stay. You have to go back. You have a child.
En ik hoorde die stem opnieuw roepen en ineens realiseerde ik mij dat het de stem van mijn man was. Mijn man die riep mij, Tetty, Tetty, wakker worden. En ik dacht, hoe kan hij mij dat aandoen om mij terug te roepen? Want dat wil ik helemaal niet. Ik wil hier blijven.
And in that moment, all I can do is say, no, I have to stay. You can't send me back. I'm finally home. I'm finally feeling the connection I had always yearned for in my life, that I thought would come through marriage, through a child, through family, through work that I love. But there was nothing in my life experience that could even come close to this sensation. It was that profound. It was that blissful. And he's repeated to me, you cannot stay, you must go back, you have a child.
Once I agreed to return, I found myself right outside my body. I was still connected in a much greater way, because I remember I was looking at my body and I was like, how is this being gonna fit in that, you know?
You cannot stay, you must go back, you have a child. And I'm thinking about my child, and I'm thinking, who would take care of her if I didn't go back? Because my parents were both dead. My ex-husband, I didn't feel was the right one for her. And my sister was still alive, but I didn't feel that she had the ability to care for my daughter in an appropriate way. And as I'm thinking about who could love and take care and be there for my daughter, I'm realizing that there's no one. And in that moment that I had that realization, I was back in my body.
The next thing that happened is
he said, well, he says, do you have any more questions before you leave? I said, I said, you know, I got to think about this. And I thought, I was thinking really hard, what am I going to ask God? Couldn't think of anything.
And I was a little mystified by the whole thing, that I am going to go back and I'm going to reside in that. And I felt very free and liberated whilst in the light. And in this light body, I felt so much larger, so much freer, so much connected to a greater knowledge than my brain and my vocabulary can deal with.
I wanted to be really smart enough to ask him something very pertinent, and so I said, well, I'm going to have to revert to an old cliche. What's the meaning of life? And he starts laughing again. I said, what's so funny now? And he says, well, I don't know why, but a lot of people ask me that question, and it's really real simple. But I tell you what, when you come back, we'll sit down. You can ask me all the questions that you ever will have. I'll answer for you. So I said, okay. He says, okay, it's time for you to go back. And I turned around. I'm sorry, but he put his arms around me. He put his arms around me. And it was a feeling that I can't explain. It was unconditional love, but it was words I can't tell you the words. And I'm sorry, but I always act like this because I can feel it again.
Near-death experiences always describe that experience, that sense that they had, the feelings that they had with that, are more real, that makes this reality a whole different situation for them. And it's been documented in many studies that have shown that when people have a near-death experience, it changes their perspective on life, their fear of death, their interpersonal relationships, how they approach their life, how they approach their jobs, their children, their family. So it has very dramatic effects, speaking to the fact that it really felt very real and really had a life-changing consequence for them.
So that when people start talking about the golden rule in the context of the near-death experience, the golden rule is not just a precept for moral conduct, it's the way it works. And you experience this during the life review. And you learn that lesson in a very forcible way as a result of going through this kind of experience. And that's why when people have NDEs, they change as much as they do. Because if you can even imagine what it must be like to go through your entire life and see everything that you've ever done without judgment, but from a kind of almost omniscient point of view with regard to the effects of those actions, and see what your actions do to other people, it's a heavy kind of lesson, and it's something that stays with you, and it informs your conduct for the time after your near-death experience.
Well, I think I've changed in just about every way it's possible to change. Certainly it's a long time, and it has taken a long time for those changes to come about. But I do really attribute those changes to that experience. At the beginning, I didn't tell anybody about the experience. I'd never heard of anybody having one, and it frightened me to think about it in a way. I felt that if I told people, they'd think I was crazy.
Well, I felt that I had been born like a newborn. Everything I'd done up until then, my education, everything I'd learned, was of no help to me, because it didn't take me into that place of feeling the love and the oneness. So I took every class that I could find as soon as I was physically able, which took quite a while. I took astrology, yoga, healing, meditation, just anything.
During that first year, I think I was really in a state of puzzling and wondering about what it was all about, why I'd had that experience and what it really meant for me. But straight away after it, a lot of things changed already, like small things, like I started to do yoga, and I'd never done that before. And I started to, through the yoga, I started then to become a vegetarian, be interested in that, and that's continued ever since. Those sorts of little things were very big steps for me at that time, because I was just a normal, a stay-at-home housewife with 2 little babies, and I'd never done anything like that before.
When I came back, I literally felt that I had been with God, and there really was nothing else to do with my life except give it to God. I had no really other reason to be alive than to serve God. So I did. I gave my life to Spirit, and it meant for the next 25 years traveling all over the world, living in probably 40 different places. Wherever anybody was asking or needing connection, then I was able to help them.
Also, I just felt I wanted to know more things. I wanted knowledge. And so I started to read voraciously. And even though I'd been a reader in my childhood, I hadn't really been reading all that much in recent years before that experience. But I started reading really very solidly. And I decided that I wanted to go to university, because I'd never been to university, and to learn. I didn't go there, didn't think of going there to get a profession, but to learn more things. I just felt I had to know more things. I didn't know anything.
This happened in 1955.
Yes.
In 1955, the phrase near-death experience didn't exist. Nobody even knew what that meant, what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, here I am, a religious person who has experienced something that would be spiritual, if not religious. My personal problem was that none of my religious experiences were there. I was with the light. There was no judgment. There was no hell. There was no good and bad. There was no big tally in the sky. There was just the light absorbing me and consuming me with unconditional love, in which I was able to consume and absorb everyone else with unconditional love. So that I didn't know what that meant. I didn't understand it. So I spent 25 years like a nomad, roaming the earth, trying to figure out, I don't know what to do. I thought I was crazy.
I knew that I had to figure out, how could I be here without despair? I went to India to spend time with my teacher, Satya Sai Baba. And in that visit, he did clear my mind and sent me back with the understanding that what I had to learn to do was to stop judging everything, everyone, myself. And that's what I've been working on ever since. It is the way that I stay peaceful.
It's done a couple of things. One is shake my own sense of self from this egoic physical structure that's trying to survive the best it knows how through, a dangerous world, to seeing this incredible matrix and dance of life that this body is part of, and yet that dance of all of life is part of me as well.
So, having come back into my body, I came back with a completely new set of values. All the values I'd had before, all the important things that I seemed to be doing before were just a nonsense. And I was just so glad to be alive and be capable of appreciating what we have here, of sounds and people and colours and flowers and growing things. And it was a fundamentally life-changing experience. And the other big thing is I came back completely without fear of anything, because once you're not afraid of death, there's not much point in being afraid of anything else.
My deep desire is to help others, to serve. This is a very, very common element you see in people going through extreme trauma or near-death experiences, is that they pop out the other side and say, wow, let's go play, let's go help. It's not about my bank account or the size of my house. It's about all of us waking up to more than what we see on the planet right now.
We have in us a divine spark that you can see it. It's a light that shines in the human being. It is our direct access to truth, our direct access to God. And the purpose of all the spiritual practices that exist are to awaken that spark, to give it life, to give it energy, so that it can transform you. And one of the energies that comes from that spark is love. This spark is exceedingly beautiful. If you see it within a human being, it is like a sun that is shining, and every human being has it. It is the divine consciousness that is given to humanity as a gift. Human beings, when you see them as they really are unbelievably beautiful. We are made of light. Yes, we have a lot of denseness, a lot of darkness in us, but our real essence is light. Somewhere you see a human being, and what is amazing is when a human being turns towards God, the light in them increases tenfold, increases 100-fold, and they start to radiate in space, and they start to give off light. And that is why a spiritually evolved human being helps the environment and connects also inwardly with other people who are spiritually evolved. It is very, very beautiful.
Oh, Renee, we are so much more than we know that we are here on earth. That's one of the things I just want people to know so very much, is that we are incredible. We are little pieces of God, in my personal opinion. We are so unlimited in so many ways. I just want everybody to know it is a great, big, wonderful, loving universe, or many universes, whatever it is, that we exist in. And we are an intricate part of it. We are just not little stumbling around human beings. This is an experience we're having.
There are a number of transformations we see with people who come back from near-death experiences. The most prominent one is that whatever they had been chasing before, whether knowledge or fame or power or money or any of these other things, that when they come back, they say that the most important thing we can do while we're alive is to learn how to love.
You see, every human being has their own unique note to play in the symphony of life. And when it is played, then it makes the most beautiful contribution that nobody else can make. Because each human being is unique. Each human being is a unique creation of the divine. And it is sad when people, for some reason or other, decide not to play that note, to stay in their fears, in their anxieties, in their pettiness, and then a lifetime is wasted.
One of the things I realized during my near-death experience is that we're all connected. I wish everybody knew how connected we all are, how that we are all one. Because if we knew that, I think this world would be a very, very different place. Because it means there's no us and them. There's no you and me. It's all us. It means that we'll actually care for other people in the same way we care for ourselves. It means also that we'll care for ourselves as much as we care for other people.
So don't worry about stuff, just ask. Whatever you need, just ask for it. And remember to tell everybody how important they are to you and how much you love them. Because in the end, that's what you remember, and that's what you take with you.
Yes, there is a level of evolution where you realize the love that is everywhere. This is one of the basic mystical experiences that many, many people on the path have. And you see that everything is made of love. There is nothing other than love. And then, once you have reached that level, you do love everybody because, as the Sufi says, wheresoever you turn, there is the face of God. And when I look at you, I don't just see you, I also see the divine. I see the divine that is in you just as it is in me. And then I can't help but love you.